What's your favourite toe and why?
I guess I'll go big toe.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's maybe the most robust in terms of like if I bump into something, it will like be the least likely to break or hurt. You know, a little tougher of a toe, and I feel like it also probably helps with my balance more than the other toes because of just the sheer amount of toe material there. So
I don't think anyone has ever referred to a sheer amount of toe material in their life before. I think that's a first. I went the other way. I went little toe because I was like, toe. I reckon it's like it's like don't underestimate the little guy. You know, I reckon if you got rid of it, you would notice more than you think. That was my
then your big toe.
No, not more than the big toe, but proportionately per toe centimeter, I think you'd notice more if you got rid of the little toe.
Okay.
So this is the quality of conversation to expect, frankly.
Yeah, sure.
Even without that question, hopefully you'd figure that out across this anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you know, that's well, now you know. But yeah, I mean, I can't possibly find a neat way to segue into anything relevant from toes, so I'm just going to have to go straight with a completely different question because there's no way I can. Looking at the vague ideas I wrote down, I can't see toe going into anything particularly productively.
Well, if you lose a toe, you'd have 9 toes, right? And there's 9 songs on the record.
That is true. And I did have, well, funnily enough, I did have more questions about that than I did about your toes. That's a I feel like that's real English teacher syndrome to get to that, get there from.
I'm the glue. Yeah, I'm bringing it together here.
Bridging those connections, yeah.
Yeah.
Crossing that bridge like someone with 10 toes would. Okay.
Or 11.
I feel like that would be more difficult.
Maybe you need 12 to balance it out.
Or could you have like one? Oh, what if you have one on the back? A bit like
that's what I was thinking, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or your foot is just one giant toe.
Oh no, don't. Oh, okay. I'm not like huge people get creeped out by people that get creeped out by feet. Would you be less creeped out if it was just one big toe? Do you think?
Then what? Then 12 toes?
That is another good question. I don't know. I don't know. That wasn't my question. Was more than.
I think I'd rather have 12 toes than just my foot is just a toe. That seems like it would be like 12 toes. Like okay, you know, something happened. But like one
toe,
in the gestation process, you know, like something. You added a toe. You could probably remove the toe too, but the one big toe on each foot.
You'd never be able to go anywhere quietly.
Yeah, there's that, and like you can't wear sandals.
That is true. I never thought about the practicalities beyond the we can go into toes, and you know that's I'm more than happy to. You'd have a dangerous kick on you with one toe as well, like a solid, you know.
Right.
Self-defense.
Yeah. Right. It would be like getting hit in the head with like a huge sock with like a bunch of pool balls in it or something like that. Just like
all the extra toes you don't have.
Right.
Right. Well, I best ask you something serious now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to tip the balance somewhere. But yeah, there you go. There's the quality of conversation for you to. I can't seriously in my own head go from that to what the sort of profound level of question that I was going to try and ask. So you're just going to have to accept this, I'm afraid.
Just jump right in.
So the I can't even take myself seriously now. So the this is such a jump. Anyway, what you I was looking through your brief from the album and stuff, and what I found really interesting was the kind of inverting. If you talked about sort of like Catholicism, and I think you said you went to like Catholic school when you were growing up. Anyone that's jumped like 30 seconds ahead in the podcast to dodge the toe bit is going to wonder how this has gone to here. But I found it interesting how you're talking about inverting some of like the imagery and stuff in terms of how you present it. I mean, obviously Catholicism and sort of like death metal is going to be some sort of inversion of imagery somewhere. But I guess my question was like, do you find that you try to look at stuff from? Are you the kind of person that tries to find other ways of maybe looking at things than just the obvious? And I mean, that part of why I asked that as well is like kind of looking at some of the lyrics as well. I'm always intrigued by lyrics, and it felt like it was more. It's less direct than some lyricists might be. And I mean in a positive way, you know, opening it up to kind of interpretation. Do you find that you're trying to, when you're writing, just in life in general, do you find you're trying to kind of look at things in, maybe take a different spin on how things might be looked at in sort of by the general public, if you like?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, hey, you know, it's metal, so sometimes it's great when shit's just like on the nose and you know exactly what you're getting. But for me, I like to sometimes take a more symbolic or, you know, poetic route, however you want to call it. I think it keeps things more interesting for me as a lyricist. I mean, I can think about the images that are being conjured in my own head, and when I'm trying to write, I think it's cool to have, like some symbolism there. I think it makes the language more colorful and interesting. I think it kind of intrigues the reader more. And certainly with music, you know, like music doesn't have to mean anything. So it just can just be like this expression of emotion, or, you know, even if you're trying to capture something, some sort of essence of the ineffable, right? So trying to play with lyrics too, and maybe being a little bit more veiled with the meanings can be cool, because someone who's reading them might interpret things in different ways, right? I mean, even the album title could be interpreted in different ways, and people have asked me in different interviews, like, oh, what's Netherhead, and what's the meaning behind the title? And, you know, to me, it sort of has one meaning as far as how I came up with it, but for someone that might just be reading it, might get a different kind of interpretation from it, or a different mood, or I mean, sometimes people have fucking synesthesia, and like people like feel colors when they hear a sound, or taste shapes or whatever, right? So there's all these different ways that our sensory apparatus like absorbs something, and to make people think a little bit more and not just give them the obvious answer up front, or the obvious meaning of something, I think is more intriguing sometimes. I think it was Francis Bacon that said, the job of the artist is to always deepen the mystery. So I always thought that was pretty cool. Like, you don't have to serve something up to someone on a silver platter. It doesn't have to be just super obvious and in your face. I mean, some of my favorite movies that, end with like a weird kind of mysterious twist, or might have like a double meaning to it, right? And then you kind of like look up like, oh, what did the director of the movie say about this ending? Like, what does it all mean? And sometimes the director is very vague and they won't give you the answer. And then you find like a bunch of whole different fan theories about what the meaning could be, and maybe they have nothing to do with what the director's initial intention was, but it's a piece of art that people are interacting with, so maybe it's just as valid as what the director is maybe secretly thinking but doesn't want to say out loud. So yeah, I definitely try to explore different themes in different ways, just to kind of keep things interesting for the reader, and also for myself.
Yeah, man. What you're saying about the film endings, have you seen the film In Bruges? I don't know how popular that is.
Yeah, I love that movie.
I absolutely love the ending. It's so clever. And actually, weirdly, speaking of weird segues, in terms of, they have all that imagery to do with the sort of end of the world, Judgment Day. It actually ties in quite well with the album. Conveniently not pre-planned. But yeah, no, there's something about, like, obviously that's not such an ambiguous ending. It's more like it all just ties in. But it's little things like, I love how they can put, like, in any form of art, you can put these clever little things in, like, how I don't know whether me referencing this film is going to be, how well do you know the film?
In Bruges?
Yeah.
I think I've seen it I've seen it more than once, but it has been a while since I've
Yeah.
watched it. I love like just the look of that movie.
Yeah, the music's great as well.
Yeah, it's just like a well-made film.
Yeah, I just love because he has like it's the way they've got the kind of the image of the painting. You know, he's looking at the painting in church and he's really bored and he's just like, oh, what's this about Judgment Day? And then like all the imagery at the end when there's like all these people in masks and stuff. It's all super
Right.
clever. But
Right.
in terms of your like when you talk about sort of symbolism and sort of how you like to present ideas, do you feel like this sort of inclination in your sort of the way you think about things, do you reckon that's possibly what led you towards like being a lyricist above and beyond being a guitarist? Because obviously there's plenty of routes just to play the guitar. I say just to play the guitar, there's anything wrong. That's all I do. But do you feel like that kind of way of looking at things is part of what maybe led you into wanting to kind of do the frontman thing, like, and be able to write your own and then deliver your own kind of ideas?
Yeah, possibly. I think it was kind of a byproduct of necessity. I mean, when the band was in its sort of earliest stages, we actually like were looking for a vocalist. So my original intention for Revocation was to have a standalone vocalist, and I would just kind of focus on guitar. And we kind of auditioned some people, and we weren't really finding what we were looking for. So I just decided to kind of, continue on with that role. And maybe like fully embracing that role, as a frontman, and writing lyrics, taking it more seriously. I guess maybe just the creative part of my mind sort of took over and thought like, okay, well, if I'm going to be doing this more and more and really take on this role, then I want the lyrics, the song titles, the imagery in general to hold up to the music that I'm writing. I don't want to be one of those bands where like the music's really cool and then like the lyrics are like an afterthought or something like that. Because if you have to look at the entire thing as a piece of art, right? Or like like this whole thing is your artistic output. So if you're slacking in one end, it might sort of cheapen the whole thing. And I certainly put my blood, sweat, and tears into writing the music for Revocation. I mean, I'm when I'm in writing mode, I'm constantly thinking about the songs. I'm obsessing over the riffs. Obviously sometimes things just come out naturally, and like, okay, cool. Like this just randomly came out, and that riff is great on its own, and I don't need to like tinker with it too much. But other times it's more laborious. Sometimes it's difficult to put the pieces together, right? Like in terms of if I have 5 riffs, like figuring out the order in which they need to go. Maybe sometimes there needs to be different connective tissue to get from one riff to the next riff so that it flows properly. It might be a guitar thing, it might be a drum thing, it could be a bass thing, right? There's all these different components that are there. So I'm focused a lot on the riff writing and then the songwriting as a whole. So yeah, the last thing I want to do is just like rush the lyrics at the end of it, or have some, I don't know, like trite shit that like doesn't connect to anything for me. I feel like when I'm writing music, I need it to be like the whole package in order to feel good about it, in order to feel like I'm signing off and putting my stamp of approval on it.
Yeah. So when it comes to like when you're talking about things like having the whole package, and you're saying about you looked around for vocalists and none really kind of maybe sort of blew you away and thought, wow, like this is it. Do you feel like you're kind of, I feel like this is something that a lot of like guitar, perhaps maybe I'm just picking up guitar frontmen and guitarists in general, and I can say this as a guitarist anyway. So, but do you feel like you're maybe one of those people that kind of is what's the word? I don't want to say like a go-getter, because that almost sounds a bit too flattering and a bit too. But like for example, you say I couldn't find a frontman, so it's like fuck it, I'm going to do it. Has that always been your kind of personality?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, especially when it comes to things that I'm passionate about. I mean, with the band, I've taken on definitely a leadership role. I used to book shows for the band. If we were going on tour before we had our booking agent, I'd be contacting local bands in different areas through like MySpace or whatever, or hitting up different clubs and promoters through MySpace, or just Googling metal club in Cleveland or whatever. So I've taken a hands-on role there. I've taken a hands-on role with the artwork and reaching out to different artists. I mean, I have like just this like huge list of different artists that I've worked with or that have cataloged for later, possibly I could work with in the future. Even just like logistical things, like we're a pretty hands-on band. Like, but as a band leader, I think know like where my strengths are and where I want to delegate other tasks to. So I don't feel like I need to do everything. I like to do the things that I'm passionate about and that I feel that I'm good at. And I can also admit to myself like the things that I'm not good at, or at least I don't really have a desire to get better at, and I would rather delegate that to somebody else. So, for example, Brett, our bass player, is incredible with like Excel spreadsheets, and so he does all like I'll come up with the idea for the t-shirt design and contact the artist that I think will execute that well, and work with them through that entire process up until I get the finished product. And then from there, Brett's talking with the merch company, like, okay, how many small, medium, larges, and XLs should we do for the tour? And then he's the guy in the trailer counting the t-shirts at the end of the night, or in a week, to see what we need to reorder. He used to like manage like restaurants and stuff like that, like back in the day, like in Jersey. So he has like the mind for that. Like, okay, we're running low on small of this design. Okay, I got to put in my order first thing Monday morning with all the different restock that I need from the merch company. So something like that, I'm sure I could do, but I just he does like a much better job at that, and I think his mind just naturally works that way better than mine does. So I'd rather let him take on the sort of like the financial stock and like all that other stuff, even like buying my plane tickets and like logistical shit like that. Brett's like really good at that. So part of, I guess, being a band leader is knowing what your strengths are and knowing what your weaknesses are, and hopefully you can find bandmates that can fill those gaps. Because it's hard enough being in a band. If you have a member that has to do like literally everything, I think it's just probably going to be super difficult, or maybe lead to like resentment or something like that down the line. If you feel like you're taking on like every single burden possible, it can be a lot. So it's nice that I have someone to share in the responsibilities with, and someone who's really great at what their role is in the band. Like I said, Brett's just got like the mind for that.
Yeah, man, trusting the bass player, that's a big step.
Right.
I can kind of somewhat relate to what you're saying, because I used to be in a band not so long ago, and I was kind of the one writing a lot of the stuff. So I play guitar and can't sing particularly well, but I can kind of sing ideas, I think it's hard to, I don't know if you sort of relate to this, but I find it hard to give up control over something that I'm really passionate about, and maybe what you were saying, maybe I was just trying to give up control of the wrong things. Maybe it was things that, or maybe there was, maybe I didn't trust the other guys to do the job that I thought I would do, but it's difficult, I find, to kind of trust other people like that. And maybe I just, like I said, maybe I just didn't find the right people. But do you feel like you sort of half answered it in some way, but do you feel like has that been like a part of sort of maturing as an artist, just becoming comfortable with other people taking up some of the slack and doing the things? Because I know there are plenty of artists out there that like just hate the idea of giving up any control, creative or even managerial, whatever. Is that, have you always been like quite good at just honing in on what you do, or was it a bit of a like steep learning curve, the idea of actually these guys, they want to be involved and they have strengths,
I feel like with with the team that we have now, because we've gone through some lineup changes over the years, but I think the current incarnation of the band is, I mean, it's the strongest it's ever been for sure. And it's not, I think when you're talking about giving up control, delegating responsibilities, like whatever you want to call it, you know, certain of those things, like that trust needs to be earned, right? Especially when you're bringing like a new member in. It's not just like, okay, cool, like this is your first tour with us, like here's like, you know, you're in charge of the merch orders now or whatever, right? Like there needs to be a bond formed. Luckily Brett has been in the band for quite a long time now, and he has certainly proven himself. And I think, you know, he kind of like led the charge on taking on that role. So it was like, okay, cool, here's a guy that wants to do this and is great at it. So like it was kind of a win-win for me. Like there was never a point. I just kind of always trusted Brett to take on that role because he was kind of led the charge on it. So, but I also know his work ethic, and I know his background, and like, you know, he like I said, he used to manage restaurants, and so it was kind of easy to give up control of something that I didn't really want to do in the first place. But we have a really good symbiotic relationship. Like I feel like the guys trust me with the reins of the band because I think I've proven myself over the years in terms of, you know, like being the main songwriter and kind of coming up with like a lot of the ideas. I feel like a great sense of like artistic freedom. And certainly I've brought in ideas before to the dudes, and they've been like, I'm not really feeling that. And that makes me kind of rethink things, and I kind of go back and maybe retool some things from there. So obviously like I want to hear their input as well. We have an input on like the set and banter and things like that. Like sometimes I'll go in and be like, oh, we should have a break between songs here, and you know, Brett will say, no, let's do a rock block, like we should do like 2 or even 3 songs at that part of the set. And I'll think about it. I'm like, yeah, okay, like yeah, let's do it, let's just like fucking hit them hard like out the gate. Or so things like that we collaborate on. And I don't think you can be in a band and think you have like all the answers, right? You have to, you're part of a collective, so you have to hear other people's ideas, you have to kind of hear people out. And I think when you have people with good ideas that are all not that it's a competition or anything like that, but you know, it's kind of a little bit of like a public square, and you have to let the best kind of idea win out, and you have to be willing to change your mind about certain things. So that's happened to me, you know, all the time in this band. The good thing is that there is that trust there, and I'm working with some really excellent dudes that I know they have the best interests of the band at heart when it comes to those types of things. You know, it's not a situation where, you know, someone wants to change a part on a song that's good because they want to just throw their hat in the ring and say like, you know, oh, I wrote this part, or, you know, whatever, right? Like sometimes people get competitive, especially when you have like a lot of different people that are that type of personality, right? Because sometimes you can ruin a song that way too, right? Where if there's like too many cooks in the kitchen, you know, you might take a great idea and everyone wants to have input on it just to have input on it, and then all of a sudden, you know, the idea was better in its original incarnation. So knowing that we all feel like a team, and we're very much like, yeah, like on the same team, feels great, because I can bring something in, and I know if someone's not feeling it, you know, it's coming from like a place that they want to make the song better overall, right? So yeah, you have to be able to give up control. You have to know your strengths and know your weaknesses, and you have to, like maybe you were just saying, like maybe you weren't in the right collective if there were times where you weren't able to get your point across, or you feel like things weren't kind of vibing. Like I feel very fortunate that I've found the dudes that you know, are just such great guys to be in a band with. But it's tough because, you know, someone could be an incredible musician, but maybe they're like not a great songwriter, right? Or someone might be a great songwriter and musician, but they're a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? And they're hard to be in a band with. So there's all these different elements that you have to take into account. I mean, someone might be great to play some local shows with or jam every once in a while, but then you get them in a van and you're going to do a month-long tour and they can't hack it on the road. So you have to find, like, it's like kind of a perfect storm of where all these elements kind of need to come together.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate. Yeah, it's a weird one. I feel like it's a frustrating process where like you say, finding the right people and actually being like disagreeing for the right reasons. I felt like sometimes we would just disagree for the sake of like just having everyone's input. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not some sort of like dictator. I'm not just like, no, it has to be my idea. But sometimes it felt like we were just putting ideas in for the sake of, oh well, everyone's got to have their idea in here. It's like, you know, if someone comes up with a cool idea, I don't really care whose it is. If it's not mine, that's fine. You know?
Right.
I feel like there's a lack of kind of, and I don't just mean this in music, I feel it with everyone. I feel like there's a bit of a lack of like, I guess like humility in this idea that like, you know, it's something you kind of mentioned, or that you kind of, I feel like you hinted at sort of in some of the lyrical ideas when you're talking about like, sort of divides in society and all that stuff. It's kind of, I think it even comes down to like your personal interactions. You know, I feel like people, I don't know what your take is, but it feels like you can talk about grand scale divide, but I feel like even there's such a sort of antagonistic thing where if you disagree, it can be, I feel like disagreeing is very, it's like a whole fucking trial nowadays. You can't just disagree even on the smallest things without it being, you know, you're bad from both sides kind of thing. What's your kind of take? Because I know there was a mention of, obviously there's only so much I can get from reading sort of the brief until I speak to you in person, but what's your take on the kind of, and what was your reason for sort of perhaps delving into talking about these kind of divides in society?
Well, it's something that fascinates me. I try to stay up with current events. Yeah, I mean, certain things I just sort of feel compelled to write about, especially if it's subject matter that is at the top of my mind, or you know, it's deeply troubling to me. I feel like writing lyrics about it is you know, a way of kind of cathartically dealing with my emotions on a variety of topics. I mean, certainly we all walk around with our own anxieties and you know, phobias or whatever, right? Like we all have our own psyches that we have to deal with, and then you slap a pandemic on it, and you know, certainly the things that were happening politically in this country, you know, where I was seeing just like a lot of like just sort of hatred sort of like seething in the political discourse, and just a lot of tribalism. You know, like I feel like I needed to kind of make sense of it in some way, and I needed to have a creative outlet that just kind of helped me process all those emotions and things that I was thinking about, and also in a way to you know, use art as, you know, a way of sort of voicing my opinion on something, and you know, maybe having some small influence somewhere down the line, right? Like, I mean, people say art is a mirror that reflects society, right? But I think it was Bertolt Brecht that said, you know, art is not a mirror to reflect society. Art is a hammer with which you shape society. So I thought that was a cool quote, and definitely, you know, gives maybe like more meaning behind, you know, people's artistic outputs, right? Like, I don't know. I think speaking truth to power is a very important thing, whether you're a public figure or an artist. I mean, I know not all artists choose to touch on those subjects, but people have made the case that, you know, all art is political in some way, because depending on what part of the world you live in or what government regime you live under, you might not have the freedom to express yourself in the way that you want to. So yeah, in some maybe small way, all art is political, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it sounds like you've come out with some great quotes, I have to say. Like it sounds like you kind of are you quite an avid like reader of some of these kind of more profound sort of, because I mean there's mention of sort of Divine Comedy and some other slightly, let's say, more challenging reads, among other things. Is that an interest to yours?
Reading, yeah, definitely. I go through kind of spurts where I'll get into the habit of reading a lot, I haven't, really had a chance to, pick up a good book in a while, just because I've been so busy with the band and all these different things with the press and stuff. And sometimes it's like a mindset thing too. Long day of teaching and working on music. I mean, hey, sometimes you just gotta like zone out and like watch The Simpsons at the end of the night, because I feel like my brain is just like going all the time with all the things that I have to sort of work on, and so there's a lot to it. But I do love to read, and I feel like my mind is at its best when I'm kind of surrounded by creativity, and like maybe I'm reading a good book and I'm working on writing some music. That to me is sort of like the most exciting time. But I definitely like to consume literature, or books on politics. They could be biographies. It just really kind of depends. Sometimes I opt for more sort of brutal realism, like America the Farewell Tour by Chris Hedges is basically just kind of like an autopsy on the body politic of America. But then other times reading like a autobiography of like Miles Davis is super inspiring, learning about his struggles, but also just his like cool, like words of wisdom regarding music, or, reading, I'm reading a book, that's basically a collection of Coltrane interviews. It's sort of like his autobiography as told through interviews. And there's just so many just golden nuggets of wisdom in that book, where he talks about just his musings on life and music, and just sort of like his kind of philosophy of music as it relates to like the universe and all these different things. And I find like that's just like good for my soul to like read the musings of a real master. So even though it's not necessarily fodder for a death metal song, like reading Lovecraft would be, or Dante's Inferno, or the King in Yellow by Robert Chambers, but it still inspires me in a way to like think about music on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, and might give me the kick in the ass that I need that day to practice for that extra amount of time, and maybe unlock some new idea that I maybe wouldn't have done if I hadn't had that voice in the back of my head, like kind of kicking around and like resonating some passage that I wrote, that I read from a book or whatever.
It feels like reading is a bit of a kind of worryingly becoming a bit of a lost art. And I say worryingly, like I'm fully part of the losing the art side of things. I need to do it myself. You can tell by this fucking empty bookshelf that not that many books are. There are some, I promise. There are some. They're just conveniently like behind where you can see, I promise.
Right.
But because like our attention is so, it feels like it's so diverted all the time that like just to sit down with, and honestly, there's a few books I've been meaning to read that genuinely, joke aside, are actually there. I've looked at them and I've been like, and I think my brain just wants a TikTok video, or it just wants and I find that a little bit kind of concerning, and I think like en masse we're kind of worryingly going towards that, and it's like I feel like there's such a, I don't know if you get this is something I get quite a lot, where if I don't feel productive with my time, I'm very bad at allowing myself the time to do other creative things, or just other productive things in life. Because say I want to write a song one day, or not a whole, write whatever, if I don't get that done, or if I don't feel like I've practiced, or I haven't done something productive with this podcast, I feel like I'll just kind of, things like reading, I think, I can't give an hour to that because I've not been productive for the rest of the day. And it's like, if anything else, maybe I should just read for an hour. At least I would have done something,
Right. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, in terms of reading being a lost art. I think that's part of the reason why I do like to read, because I just feel like it's like good for my brain to like put the phone down for a minute and just engage in the analog world for a while, rather than just remain in the digital world. I think something about just holding a book and just turning the pages, I don't know, it kind of draws you into that world. I mean, I feel like fucking TikTok is just like rewiring everyone's brain, right? So the fact that I can kind of resist that urge and disconnect from that, as much joy as I get out of reading something, whether I'm learning something new, or it's challenging my preconceived notions of something, or it's just like a fun story to read, I'm also kind of thanking myself for being like, okay, cool, yeah, you're keeping a long tradition alive in some way, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah, it's I feel like what you're saying about rewiring the brain, like I can literally feel that. I'm weirdly kind of glad that I'm somewhat conscious of it, because I think a lot of people aren't. I'm not trying to be all pretentious and I'm aware of all of this. I'm still succumbing to some of the same issues as a lot of people, but it's almost sometimes more frustrating being aware of when you pick up your phone, you go on it for 5 minutes, or you're distracted doing this, that and the other, and it's like being aware of it is almost sometimes like worse. You kind of think, oh, blissful ignorance would be nice, but but yeah, it is true.
There's an app for that.
Yeah, I suppose it probably is. The irony of finding, actually, joking aside, the irony of having apps to stop you being on your phone is kind of... There's an app I found that and the ultimate irony is I've used this maybe all of twice. It's called, I think it's called Forest or something, where you grow, it like grows like a little, like a nice digital forest on your phone, but it's for all the time that it'll like plant a sort of a tree, and the size of it will be according to how much time you spend off your phone. Mm-hmm. So like when you come back and you can kind of... But then you're still kind of engaging with the phone, aren't you? But like I remember hearing a really interesting fact that apparently a lot of stress, when you feel very severely stressed in the moment, you get that kind of tunnel vision. Supposedly, and don't quote me on this, it's something that linked to stress is the idea of looking at a phone. It's very like tunnel vision-esque. It's close to your face a lot of the time, and you're kind of looking right at it.
Right.
So suppose
you're watching TikTok videos of just like spiders and shit,
Yeah, I mean that's like next. I don't know what spiders are like where you are, but like they're not that. There's not. The thing is, we don't get many of them here. Like there aren't that many bad ones, but like had a horrible one last night, and it like by most people's accounts probably wasn't that bad. But
right.
My girlfriend was here, and I'm just like, I do not feel like the man of the house right now. But what's the maybe an interesting one to kind of finish up and not steal a huge amount of your time on. What's the most interesting thing you kind of recently, would you say, learned and maybe has impacted your life from something you read?
Oh man, there's so many good things, that I've just kind of picked up along the way. I think it was Coltrane said, you can improve as a player by improving as a person. And that just seems so like deep to me and so spiritual, like, having not separating yourself from like being a musician and being like, just a human being, and like, but really trying to work on yourself in a variety of ways. And I think it makes total sense. Like, the healthy you are and kind of like mind and body, like that probably is only going to filter back into your music, whether you're sort of more inspired to play, or you're just have more of a clearer head, or even if you are wrestling with certain things, like embracing those emotions and kind of being in the moment, and like you not doing something destructive to kind of get away from that, but kind of channeling that emotion in a healthy way and then working on music. So I don't know, that just seemed very profound to me, and it just I don't know, Coltrane is just like a spiritual cat.
Yeah, I wish, because I swear it's a jazz thing where everyone calls each other jazz cats, don't they? And I wish other people could call each other something or other cats. I just feel like it's such a nice term to go with.
Bring it back, dude.
Yeah. Well, did it ever leave? I don't know. Or is it just in jazz?
Well, you bring it to something else, right? Bring it into the death metal world.
Death metal cats. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice one. The Yeah, there's I think the whole thing. Actually, he said to say hi. Chris from Players Pick podcast, A&R at Kiesel.
Oh, cool. Oh yeah.
I literally just spoke to him actually.
Nice.
So he was the one who asked your question, and he was talking a lot about improving yourself to improve. So I asked him a question like, okay, so for like podcasters, what for aspiring podcasters or aspiring musicians who want to get a Kiesel endorsement, like what should you work on? And actually, like it all just came back to like just working on yourself, really, like rather than trying to sort of attain all these extrinsic goals, actually just working on what's within you. I think is kind of it. They almost seem to fall like, what's the word? Kind of fall in front of you. It almost seems like I found just working on this podcast. I've just found like if I just keep cracking on, opportunities come up, and it's like seems the way forward. I think that's my ramblings anyway. So I'll have to get you to ask a question to start the next podcast. So you can ask about toes. You can ask about whatever, you can ask about profound and meaningful things. You can fit toes into a profound and meaningful comment. I don't know.
I mean, should we just stick with toes or like?
You can ask a toe themed question. For the record, like I've done, this is like 40 something. There's not been any other toe questions. Like,
well, like we touched on it earlier. So yeah, would you rather have like 20 toes on each foot, like double the amount of toes, or just one big toe for each foot?
So now you're going to start a thing where like the next person's going to be like, so like a toe question, yeah. Like,
I mean, I have to now. Yeah, now.
I'll see you in a year and I'll be all like bearded and just like haggard and just like, no, I can't do more toe questions.
Right, yeah, like your whole podcast will be just people with like foot fetishes.
Toes with Joe. Yeah. There you go.
Welcome back to Joe's Toes. Yeah, fuck it. We'll go with the toe question. You get 20 toes each foot, or each foot is just a giant big toe, and why? Please make sure you follow up with the why. I want to know the reasoning.
Yeah, you got one of you, but you can't like not. I mean, no one's just gonna go 20 toes anyway. Carry on.
Right. Yeah. So you think you'll naturally get a response from that?
Yeah. Well, you'd hope so.
Yeah.
What if I have? I know what's going to happen now. The next person I speak to is going to coincidentally be like an odd-toed person. Going to offend someone.
But 20 toes on each foot, that's a lot.
I don't know. Who knows? It depends where you're from.
I guess so, yeah.
The other thing is I need you to plug... I used to reserve it to just like artists, but actually just like any musical... It can be a band, or it could be an artist or a music person. Someone you feel like maybe doesn't get the love they deserve, that could do with a bit of a plug.
Let's go Donnie Benet. Yeah, fucking love Donnie Benet.
Nice, awesome. Well, thank you. And if you've got any last things you want a sort of last message to the world, or a plug, or anything you want to.
Thanks for the interview. Check out the new record, Nether Heaven. It's coming September 9th. We're going to be going on tour. Come see us live. Come say what's up.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah. Whether you have, 50 toes on each foot or just, one big toe per foot, it doesn't, all toed people are welcome.
Free revocation merch for anyone with 50 toes.
Yeah, sure.
I think you're safe. Like you question that for a split second. Like, no, I'm made of money.
It's not your merch to give away, Joe. But fine.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Joe will buy if you have 50 toes. Joe will pay for the t-shirt.
I probably
will invoice you. No, it's fine. If you have 50 toes, you can get a free shirt. That's fine.
Wicked. Well, on that amazing note, thank you.
Thank you.